Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to How to Get Hired. I am Bill, the company's expert. Thank you for joining me today. This is a bit of a special week, an abnormal week, if you will, on my channel. I am doing my live streams in a slightly different order, and we have this extra episode of How to Get Hired this week. I'm going to try and adjust my camera here. It's really, really bright. It's making me look like an angel, and that's no good. So there we go. Something like that. Yeah, thank you for joining me today. This is an interactive live stream, so if you're seeing my beautiful face, my beautiful angelic face right now, you should see a chat box somewhere nearby. Get in the chat box. Let me know what you're wondering about. Let me know what you're struggling with. If you are between jobs, if you are gainfully employed right now, but you're looking to move into something a little bit better, a little bit, more to your liking, maybe climbing the ladder a little bit, something like that. Whatever your situation is, I'm here to try and help you out. So if you are a subscriber to my channel, for a little while, you should be able to ask a question, and I will do my best to help you. The title of today's episode is, Why Do You Want to Work Here? Best answer. So we're going to answer that job interview question. And also, thank you notes. We're going to talk about that, sending a thank you note to a recruiter or a hiring manager after you've done an interview, presumably. We're going to talk about that also. This is episode 108 of How to Get Hired. So welcome. I see that, is it Regis? Is that how you say that? Regis says, hello, Bill. Hope you're doing well. I am doing okay. I did not get a lot of sleep last night. Just things kind of ran away with themselves, and I got something like 2 or 3 hours sleep. Very unprofessional. Usually not something I do, especially at my sort of stage of life. I'm not 21 anymore, so the benefits of a good night's sleep are really good. R. Singh is here. Says, question: how do you get past the AI bots? I applied to 86 jobs with a bachelor's of science degree in biology and 18 years of nursing experience as a licensed practical nurse. Wow, that's a nice mix. Rejection letter at 3 a.m. responses. Yeah, well, there's a lot to unpack in that question, S. Singh. First of all, I'm going to say right off the hop that if you are applying to posted jobs, where you go on the internet and you look at job postings and you are responding to those with the job application, usually it includes your resume, that kind of thing. That is one of the worst ways to get a job. So it's the default way, especially for a lot of young people that don't have a lot of experience with this. It's kind of the most obvious kind of way, the most, not obvious, but it's the most visible way to get a job. However, most people do not get hired that way. You can still get a job that way, but what you should be doing, in my opinion, is reaching out to organizations that have the potential to hire you and doing it that way. There's so many advantages. One of them is you don't have to deal with this crap. Now, let's address your question. If you are doing this, okay, and you are going through what I would call the official process of getting hired, where you are responding to a job posting and you're following the HR organization's official procedure. So you're sending in an application to a website or an email address, something like that, and it goes through an applicant tracking system, ATS. And because these days, those types of posted jobs, they get hundreds and hundreds of applicants, the vast majority of these systems have to do some kind of automated filter, right? And that's where they employ, I don't know if I'd even call it AI in a lot of cases. Like, it's just the sort of, when they ask you those yes or no questions, if you apply on a website, they say, are you willing to relocate? Yes or no. And you have to pick from like a combo box or something like that. Just so everybody knows, those are like sudden death elimination questions, right? So if it says, are you willing to relocate? And you say no, usually what happens is that it then stops your application right there. So it doesn't go any further. So when you submit it, it doesn't make it past that stage. So if there's any of those questions that have been specifically separated out and they like ask it to you, during the application process, that's usually what those are. So make sure that you either answer favorably, or most of the time there's no real point in completing the rest of the application, unfortunately. There's always exceptions, but that's the general rule, okay? So that's one way to get past the AI bots, is that if they have any of those questions, you don't answer unfavorably, okay? Usually there'll be some kind of like a salary or compensation question. They'll say, is your, how much, like, what's your salary expectation? And then you have to enter a number, and you can't skip the question, and you can't enter in anything than a single number. And what's going on in the back end is that it's sort of taking whatever you wrote in, whatever number you gave, and it's comparing it against a hurdle rate of some kind. And then that's the sort of go, no-go test, whether it will terminate your application right there with a rejection, or it will pass it on to the next stage, okay? So, like, that's the problem with these things. Now, incidentally, the way to answer that question is always give the lowest number you would ever possibly accept. If everything you don't know about the job, you just assume it's perfect. You assume it's like a dream job, okay? You can always revise your number upwards later as you learn the true details of the job, everything they're not telling you, and there's like many, many variables there, okay? Then, and I'm just going to say this so that I don't spend, half an hour on this one question, but then it's a game of matching up the requirements for the job with what you've written in your application. So usually that means your resume. So what that means literally is you've got to use their lingo. That's where the keyword matching and the key phrase matching come into the game. So if you are applying for jobs with like a one-size-fits-all resume, you have your resume and you're just sending that to every job you're applying for. Here, have my resume, have my resume, have my resume. Usually when it comes to this game that we're playing, applying for posted jobs, that's unfortunately quite ineffective these days. It's much less effective than it used to be, because what the ATS systems are usually doing is they are looking for very specific words or phrases on your resume, and those have to be there. And if they're not there, it just eliminates you right there and then. You get a rejection. And the annoying thing is that it's like literal words. So as we know, there's more than one way of articulating a lot of skills or roles or qualifications, right? You could say I was a manager and I made, $100,000 net income for my business unit or something. They don't want to hear net income. If it says on the job posting that they're looking for someone who has made $100,000 profit, then you need to use the word profit. You can't say net income, even though net income and profit are synonymous. They mean the same thing. You have to use their lingo, right? So in the job posting, if they have a requirements section and they said, we're looking for someone who has this, 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 and this, that's kind of what you have to show on your resume for the most part, like a lot of those, if not all of them, for it to get past the bots, the ATS system, okay? And you have to express it using their own lingo. So that's basically what you have to do. I'm not going to get into how you do that because I'd be here for another half hour talking about that, but hopefully that makes sense. I've got a lot of videos. There's a lot of resources out there. But the biggest thing I find that prevents people from winning at that game is they don't want to tailor their resume for the job they're applying to. And I get it. It's time consuming. It's an extra step, and it's not like a quick little thing you can do in 30 seconds. It's something you got to put some time into. Now, what this means is that you got two choices. Either only apply for jobs that you really care about and then put some time into it. Really tailor what you send them so it fits perfectly with what they said they're looking for. Or you can use AI tools, like there's chat bots like ChatGPT and others that will help automate this process for you so that it's a lot less labor intensive for you. You can still apply to a lot of jobs, but you're sending out tailored resumes and tailored applications for all these posted job opportunities that you're applying to. Okay. We've done a lot of stuff in the past, and there's a lot of great resources outlined. People that will show you, if you're not familiar with chatbots, how they can like really, really help you. You sort of paste the text of your resume, and then you paste the text of the job posting, and then you tell it, rewrite my resume so that it matches this job posting, with the lingo and the qualifications. You really emphasize those. Take out anything that's completely unrelated from my resume so it doesn't dilute it, and then give me the rewritten resume so I can use it to apply for it. It's as simple as that. But that's what you have to do, okay? The reason you got to do that is because, these jobs these days are getting hundreds and hundreds of people applying to them, right? So in order to, beat out like 600 people, you have to have something that matches pretty much exactly what they're looking for, right? Using all the words that they recognize and, sort of mentioning all that stuff, right? So even if it's not like an exact match with what you have, as much as you possibly can, like use all those words and all those phrases and mention those things. Okay. Anyway, that's obviously an incomplete answer. To really get into detail, it takes a lot more talking. But I got to move on. But hopefully that helped our Sing. I encourage you to learn more about this. And there's all kinds of things you can do that will work, okay, that will help. So just learn about those things, okay? Regis says, welcome to the club. Yeah. I'm not going to say that. Mr. Al says, hey, dude, greetings from Cusco, Peru. Great content. Your channel is like gold. I'd like to break out my South American Spanish, but I fear that my accent would be so horrible that it would just be embarrassing. But cheers. Thank you. Thank you, and thanks for being here. You're welcome, Arsing. Susanu a la Richard? Right on. Like Susan Dick kind of thing, right? Says, normally, to go most places and check them out before I apply, we'll look into ATS later. Rare in my work, people are hired from an application. Yes, exactly. That's what I was saying. It's the most visible method for people that are like new to the whole job search thing. It's kind of what leaps to mind when you think like, how do I get a job, right? But it's actually not the most popular method. If you go to a place where people are working, like to any place of business, and you were to survey people and you say to them, how did you get this job? Most people are not going to say, oh, I applied cold to the company. I saw their job posting. I sent in an application and they hired me. Like after interviews and stuff, they hire me. That is not what most people will say. Instead, they'll say it's some form of networking. Either, I had a coworker in a previous job that ended up working here, and then I reached out to them and said, hey, I'm looking for a job. Is there any vacancies where you're working? I understand you are doing okay at that place where you went to. And they said, sure, I think they are looking for someone right now. I'll tell my boss that I recommend that he check you out or something like that. And you send in an application, something like that. Or you have a brother or a cousin or whatever that's sort of, they didn't necessarily get you the job, but they got them to consider you seriously. And they looked at you and you fit the bill. You had what they were looking for. So most people will say some form of that. That's how they got their job. Some people will have reached out to organizations. Either they walked through the front door and applied in person. They just went up to the front counter and said, hey, can I talk to the manager? And maybe the manager wasn't around, but say, hey, I'm going to leave this with you. Here's my resume. If I leave this with you, can you see that they get it? And they say, sure. And then that person went away, and then they followed up with the manager. They said, hi, I'm just following up to see if you received my resume that I left at the front desk for you yesterday. Excuse me. Just so you know, if ever you're looking for someone to join your operation that can do this, I'd love to work for you, and I have these skills. So no pressure. Have yourself a great day. If ever you're looking, that kind of thing. And they said, actually, yeah, we are looking for someone like that. Why don't you come in tomorrow? You're free tomorrow. Come in for an interview. Something like that. Like it's that kind of networking type thing. You don't have to know anybody. You just reach out, right? So that's the most popular method of getting hired. It's some form of networking, either friends and family, ex-coworkers, or you don't know anyone, but you reached out to them. Like they don't know you and you don't know them, but you reached out to that organization and just said like, hello, I'm here. I can do this if ever you're looking, right? There's all kinds of different methods in there, but some form of networking. So Susanoo is correct. You are typical when you say like, it's rare that I see my company hiring people through like just posting a job and eliciting applications from total strangers, You're welcome, S. Singh. Al, my close personal friend Al says, I will check your MBA course out for sure. I can't buy with dollars, but I can provide you 2 llamas and corns. Only if you call it maize, okay? And if the llama doesn't spit right in my face, it's no dice, okay? That's what we see all the internet fail videos. That's what they're always doing, right? And unless it does that, I'm not interested. Then I can get my friends to come and pet it or something. Susanoo says, oddly, the applications were more for payroll than getting hired. Okay. S. Singh says, I love your channel. Really gave a new perspective on the hiring process. I binged on your... Yeah, because I'm not actively or formally working as a recruiter. I'm a management guy. Now, I've been a hiring manager, and I've hired people and fired people, and I've hired recruiters. And I've taught recruiters in university, like in business school. But I'm not an HR guy. I'm a business guy. So I'm giving you a slightly different perspective on this stuff. And listen, there's some bad recruiters out there, right? They're not all bad. There's a few good ones. It's fine. But the thing is that when you interview with the recruiter, just in the interview, okay, you have a complex relationship with the recruiter. Sometimes they're your ally, and sometimes they're your adversary, right? Sometimes your goals align. Like if you're a promising candidate, they want you to be hired. If they have discovered you and they think that you're good, they want to recommend you to their boss, usually the hiring manager, and they want the hiring manager to agree that you're really good and they should hire you, and then they hire you. That's what they want. So in that sense, they're your ally. They're rooting for you. However, at other times, they're your opponent. They're your adversary. For example, when you're negotiating salary, you want to get as much as you possibly can out of them, right? And they want to get you for as little as they possibly can give, right? So in that situation, you are adversaries. You have completely opposite goals, right? So who usually talks about hiring? Well, a lot of recruiters are out there talking about hiring, and that's fine. They have special insights into what it's like being a recruiter and what goes on their day-to-day stuff. But I think sometimes the flaw with that is that they try and convince you that they're completely on your side. And a lot of times they're not completely on your side. They're giving advice that's kind of self-serving to them. They want you to play right into a recruiter's hand, right? So for example, when they say how to answer the question, what is your weakness? You go to a job interview and the recruiter asks you, so what is your weakness? What's your greatest weakness? I've heard a lot of recruiters just advise people, oh, just be completely open and honest. Just tell them everything they want to know. Don't hold anything back or else they'll know. And it's like, what? No, that's good advice for you to play right into the hands of the recruiter, but it's not necessarily good for you, right? So I try and give a bit more balanced, honest kind of appraisal of this stuff from the candidate's perspective. Okay, where did I leave off here? Susan says, a younger me would be asking about how to create the impression to the company that I'm going to, that I'm of value to them. Yeah. That's probably the most pertinent question you could ask. And the most important thing for you to know. Hello, welcome to hell. This is the sales process. You're selling yourself as a candidate. Like I've said many times, what you want to convey to the company is you want to say to them, listen, all those other candidates that you're considering right now, you might be interviewing them too. You need to forget about all of them and hire me. And here's why, right? It's a sales process. So people that have never been in sales, like people from operations and technical type people and a lot of introverts, not all introverts, but a lot of introverts, welcome to hell, because this is the sales process. It's actually not nearly as hard or as slimy as you think it is. It's actually really not a big deal. All you have to do is talk about what you have, what you know, and what you've done. If you can do that, you're well on your way. That's all you really have to do. It's trying to understand what they're interested in. A lot of people go down interviews, like especially a lot of younger people, especially a lot of younger, technical, introverted type people, they go down to job interviews, and for them, it's all about them. I'm proud of this accomplishment, so I'm going to tell you. I feel that, I'm good at this, so I'm going to tell you, right? The problem is, it's not about you. It's about what they happen to be looking for. If you happen to be what they are looking for, then they will hire you. If you could be really, really great, but if you just don't happen to be what they're looking for, they won't hire you. So it's not about you. It's about what they are wanting to hear, what they're looking for. What things are they wanting to hear that you have? So you go down to a job interview, you tell them that stuff. The great thing is that a lot of that stuff they've disclosed. It's on the job posting. So when they say, we're looking for someone who has this education, these skills, this experience, that's written in the job posting under the section called requirements. Usually that's how it's laid out. Well, if you go down to the job interview and you say, hey, just so you know, I have this education, I have this experience, and I have these skills, right? That's why you should hire me. And they're thinking like, wow, that's perfect. That's exactly what we're looking for, right? So you look really promising to them. It's when you start talking about stuff that you're proud of, which is good. It's a good thing that you have, but that's not what they're looking for, That's when it doesn't really work. You know what I'm saying? Okay, I'm going to just try and respond to these questions, and then we're going to get on to the topic of today's live stream, which is answering some of these questions. Where were we here? Okay, Buteween. I know Buteween. You've been here before. Thanks for the help. What % of the resume needs to match a description in order to pass the ATS? Oh, I don't know. As much of it as possible. Okay? So if they've given you 5 things that they said they're looking for, what you want to try and do is have those 5 things pretty prominent on your resume saying that you have them. Okay? Now, obviously, you're not going to lie outright. You're not going to say you got a medical degree when you don't have one, right? Like we all know this, right? But as much as possible, you're going to try and say those things, right? That's all I'm saying. Don't start talking about other things you have that are not things that they said they were looking for. Instead, go to the things they said they were interested in and put those front and center, nice and prominent on your resume and talk about them, okay? And then don't water it down with like 50 other things that have nothing to do with anything that they mentioned in the job posting. Susanoo says, something often not thought about by those trying to work with me is their experience is a problem, okay? It's much easier to train someone that knows nothing that is than train someone trained badly prior, not saying in every case experience is a problem. Okay, yeah, I mean, you're making some pretty sweeping generalizations there, Susanoo. You continue, you say primary concern in glazing was safety, being able to work on a team, being able to speak up if there's a problem, so on, because the work was very, very dangerous. Majority of people trying to work with us didn't have the correct mindset for the work. They didn't even think think about mindset. Yeah. Yeah, it's called culture. It's like, you know, what's normal for you in your workplace, right? If you work in certain industries, obviously safety is front and center. I was the senior safety officer for a company for a couple of years, and yeah, it's a big deal in certain industries. Like there are fatalities in those industries every year. You know, it's a big deal. You know, but in other industries, it doesn't even enter people's minds because it's not particularly dangerous, or it's not perceived as being particularly dangerous. So it's just not part of the culture. You know. Now the thing is, what you got to remember, Susanoo, is that, you know, people are trainable, some more than others, right? So just because somebody has experience in an industry where safety is not front and center, doesn't mean that you can't train them to think like that and act like that within a very short amount of time, right? If they walk in the door and they don't just know how you guys do things at your organization, that's not a signal that they're a bad employee or a bad person. You know, it just means they need a little bit of onboarding. That's what it means, right? It's after you've onboarded people that, you know, like and maybe it's been 6 months and they still don't get it, then, you know, that's maybe a sign of a problem employee or something. Marie France says, thank you for all the help you are providing to the community. You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, excellent. Let's talk about the main topic of this live stream. So today, this episode is called Why Do You Want to Work Here? Best Answer. And thank you notes. Let's talk about thank you notes first. This is when you send a thank you note to a recruiter or hiring manager after an interview, presumably. So let's talk about this. Okay. Yeah, I get people asking me about this occasionally. Listen, it's a big wide world out there. Everything you could possibly imagine happens some of the time, right? You know, there isn't just one right way of doing things that always works and that applies universally. There's different things that happen, but we're going to talk about the general rule, okay, when it comes to thank you notes. Most people don't send them. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't. It just means that not many people do. Some people do, but you know, the problem is it's very labor intensive. If you're applying to a lot of jobs and you're taking a lot of interviews, you know, it's just yet another thing to do. And especially if you're like customizing them, you got to put some thought into it. And that's thinking work, and it's just yet another thing you got to do. And it's regarded as optional. So a lot of people don't do it. Okay, so here's the deal. First of all, don't expect a response from a thank you note. Should you do them? The odds are is that it's not going to do any good, but sometimes it does. So does that mean you should do it all the time or not? It's a question of how much time do you have and how many jobs have you applied to and how many interviews have you got. what I'd recommend is that you certainly send a thank you note. Excuse me, God, I'm still under the weather. Certainly send a thank you note for every important job, okay? If you got an interview and it wasn't just some Mickey Mouse interview, it was for something you really wanted, definitely send a thank you note. The way you want to do this ideally is you want to know the people that interviewed you. So you know their names, you know their email address, right? And then afterwards, after the interview, within 24 hours, you send them an email or a DM that basically is short and it says, thank you for giving me the interview, okay? The reason you want to do this is because in theory, it signals that you're enthusiastic, you're attentive. Now, is it taken that way? A lot of times it isn't. A lot of the times recruiters don't even look at these because they're overworked enough as it is. But sometimes a recruiter will look at it, or a hiring manager will look at it, and it will sort of signal that you're taking that opportunity seriously, you're enthusiastic about it, and it also signals that you're professional and you're attentive and you have good communication skills if you do it right. Okay? So certainly for jobs you care about, especially, you do want to be sending some kind of thank you note. Okay? Only say positive things. If you're not going to say like 100% positive things, then don't bother. Okay? And I get it. There's a lot of rude, incompetent, unprofessional recruiters and hiring managers out there. I'm the first to admit that. So sometimes you may not feel like sending one. Okay. Now here's what I recommend. If you're going to send some kind of template thank you email, personally for me, I would say don't bother. It won't do any good. The only time it's going to really make an impact on the person receiving it is if you say something that's sort of tailored to them and you try and make them feel good about something good that they did for you. Okay? Everybody loves to get a compliment, especially if they think it's legitimate. Okay? They don't like to get like a generic thing that they think is a template. If they feel that, like, you're actually saying something to them and you're showing genuine appreciation, that makes people feel good. Okay? If you say like how often do you get someone coming up to you and saying, hey, that thing you did yesterday, when you did that thing, you called me and you gave me this information, thanks for that. That's fantastic. Most people don't take the trouble to do it, but you did. And I really appreciate it. So way to go. How often do you get someone saying something like that to you? Probably not super often, just playing the odds. But it makes you feel really good, right? So imagine if you're a recruiter and you deal with tons of candidates, and most of them don't send thank you emails. And the ones that do, usually it's like some kind of template. Thank you for considering my application. I look forward to meeting you in the future. That doesn't do that just annoys you, if anything. It's like more work you got to deal with. But if someone says, hey, listen, I met you yesterday. If you recall, like, you invited me down for an interview, and I really appreciated the way that, you offered me a drink as soon as I got there, and you made sure that I was doing fine. I've been to a lot of interviews, and a lot of people don't do that, so I really appreciated how welcoming and hospitable you were. I found that's quite exceptional. And it really made me feel good. So thank you very much for being so cordial and polite. Something like that. That was great. It was very, very nice to meet you. And I hope that we will have the opportunity to do so again in the future. Thanks and have a great day. Something like that, People see that and they go, oh, you're welcome. It was my pleasure, And they get a good feeling about you. It's also very professional, very polite, right? So if you can do that, then it's well worth doing this. It'll get you some extra points, okay? It'll be better than your competitors, the other candidates who didn't send thank you notes. Okay. So that's what I want to say about that. So a standard format would be, I'm just looking at my notes here, just something like saying, thank you for taking the time or selecting me to interview. I appreciated, and then fill in the blank. I appreciated the way that you, asked me about my welfare or something when I came in, and made sure that, I had a place to sit down and a place to hang my coat, and, you offered me some refreshments and stuff like that. That was very, very nice and very gracious of you. Show a bit of enthusiasm, I had a really great time speaking with you yesterday, ! Something like that. You can put a bunch of stuff in there, but generally keep it short, maybe about 4 or 5 sentences, something like that, like just maybe in point form almost. And, that's basically all you have to have. So that's what I'd recommend. Should you do this for every job? Probably not. If you're applying for posted jobs, you're probably applying for a lot of jobs. It may not be practical to do this, and I don't think it's a great use of your time if you're spending a lot of time sending out tons of these. But certainly for jobs that are really desirable and you're really close to getting them, definitely. That's what I have to say about that. Let's return to the chat here. Let's see, where do we leave off? We're talking about glazing. Yeah, we covered that. Al says, I saw your video when you say not to provide notice to the company, and it is true and useful. Most of us feel embarrassed or unloyal if we go to another company, but that shouldn't be the case. Yeah, I did another video that for some reason YouTube is promoting it far and wide, at least for me, talking about school. And this is a throwback to how we've been conditioned. We don't want to be rude. We don't want to, not tell our bosses that we might be thinking of leaving, right? It's the courteous thing to do. The problem is that it's not in your best interest. And many people have been burned on doing that. They do the right thing, the courteous thing, the professional thing, where they don't play games with people. They just announce exactly what their intentions are, so that everyone is on the same page. And then they get burned. The company terminates them before they have a chance to resign. Things like this, right? You know what I mean? It's like I was talking about with recruiters. Sometimes they're your ally, sometimes they're your adversary. Your boss at work it's the same type of relationship. Sometimes they're your ally, and sometimes they're your adversary. And in this case, they have conflicting goals with you. They want to terminate you on their terms. That's what's best for them for a variety of reasons. You want to leave on your own terms. You want to decide when you leave and how you leave. That's what's best for you, right? So these are mutually exclusive, right? So you have conflicting goals. So that's why, you need to do what's in your own best interest when you're resigning. Al says, by the way, my Winglish, is my Winglish good? I mean, is understandable? Yes, absolutely. It's actually quite legible, and I can parse it, no problem. Susanoo says, for sure, remember when people sent them, rare it happened. Yeah, Amaze says, getting a response to a thank you note is generally a positive sign per personal experience. However, I've gotten an offer both when I got a response and when I did not. Yeah, look, you're going to see everything happen some of the time. This is not like an exact science. There are many different employers, and every single one of them, every single organization has a slightly different take on hiring and firing and how you assess someone's value. They all do it differently. Some of them are wildly different. Some of them are just slightly different. You know what I mean? So, we're going to see everything happening. We're going to see people that tell the recruiter to F off and then have the recruiter call them back and say, you're hired. That's happened also, And It's like they say, like, yeah, you got the spunk for the, you're just the kind of person that we're looking for. You got that edge, you don't take crap from anyone. It's like, that's who we were looking for. You know what I mean? You're going to get all kinds. So we're talking about general rules, right? And the thing that underlines everything that I say in these live streams is it depends on what method you're using to apply for the job. If you're reaching out to executives, I don't mean you're an executive. I mean, like, you could be entry level, but if you're reaching out to executives and sending them a note and saying, I'd very much like to, meet with you and ask you a few questions about the industry, if I might. I'd love to get your opinion on questions about your industry. Would that be okay? Doing an informational interview. And then once you're there, you pursue it, and then it turns into like, hey, I was thinking about what you said to me in person, and, I would love to be a part of that. If ever you're looking, let me know, and then they hand your resume to the director of HR. They hand it to some subordinate middle manager or something. And, they say, look into this person. If you're looking for somebody, I've met this person, see if you could use them, kind of thing. That's happened too. That's happened a lot. So that's going to work completely different than if you're responding to a posted job ad, right? Like a job posting, and you're sending in your resume and application, and you're talking to some contracted recruiter that doesn't know anything about the job themselves, and they're doing an initial screening. It's going to work completely different. The way they assess you is different. The process is completely different. The communication will be completely different. Like, everything will be different, Mary France says, can you send a note to the hiring manager that you are going to have the interview with soon? You can do whatever you want. Now, whether it'll work or not will vary, right? Generally, like, you're talking about sending a note before the interview. Generally, that doesn't produce great results. Like, I don't think it harms anything, but it doesn't, give you a sort of boost or give you more points or anything, because they already know that they're going to interview you. They've already decided to interview you. So you sort of like contacting them and like starting a conversation with them before you even get to the interview, it's kind of extraneous. It doesn't really add anything generally, but there's always exceptions. Like, if you had like a sort of legitimate question, you say like, will this be a tour? Do I have to bring any special attire if you're going to give me a tour of the facility as part of the interview? I'm just wanting to know what I should wear to the, to the property, or something like that. Like, if it's a legitimate question, then sure. But like, just to kind of shoot the shit, with the recruiter, generally that doesn't get you that far, as a general rule. Yeah, Susanoo is talking about what I'm saying there. Susanoo says, thank you for being a useful guide to the future workplace. You're giving people a real heads up on some of the best ways to get work and providing. Yes, I'm trying to. Anyway, Susanoo, kind of want to be more than a number or a piece of paper. Main thoughts on that? Yeah, that's why you do the networking thing. Because, you see, the thing is, the recruitment and selection function in larger organizations has been systematized. It's been sort of tweaked into like a standard procedure. So every candidate follows this procedure. You send in an application, they look at all the applications side by side, they examine them all in the same way, so it's quote unquote fair. And then, if we call you back, then you move on to the next stage of the process. Very bureaucratic, very efficient, but it's efficient in some ways. But the problem with recruitment and selection is that the way it's practiced in large enterprise, you can try and make everything efficient like you would in, like, say, operations. The problem is that spotting talent is very, very hard at the best of times. Like, we're so terrible at doing it that you can make this process really efficient, but the little piece of the process where you actually determine somebody's value, we're terrible at doing that. And on top of that, there's no standard method of doing this. Every employer employs a different method of assessing the value of candidates, right? So that just turns everything on its head. That makes, like, this whole thing, like, you eliminate a lot of the efficiencies you gain, by conducting the process this way, right? So in my experience, you see large enterprise doing their recruitment and selection a certain way, very sort of bureaucratic and very process oriented. And then you see smaller businesses, and small means anything under like 500 employees, they have a completely different way of assessing their candidates. And it's first of all, it's not a formal procedure usually. It's more like you talk to the boss, or you talk to the hiring managers kind of informally. You have a very loose kind of interview, which is more of a conversation/discussion. And you go off their gut feeling of whether they got along with you and they feel that you have the skills. It also is based highly on recommendations, because that is by far the best way to assess someone. Anyone can tell you what you want to know right to their face in like a 45-minute interview. It's very hard to detect, like, someone who's, not legitimate, or who's just saying all the right things, but they're lying through their teeth, or they're putting on an act of being like super friendly and easy to work with when in reality they're not, or they're concealing, like, they're very good at concealing some pretty major issues that they have, right? So this is the problem. And, corporate recruitment and selection, they know this, right? So they only employ that process for lower level jobs. Once you get to, like, a certain level of management, like, the sort of mid-level management, they don't employ any of this process at all. Once you're making decisions, completely different game. Because it doesn't work for spotting talent. It might be okay for entry-level employees, and no offense to people, but the way companies regard lower-level jobs is that it's like easy come, easy go. If this person doesn't work out, no big deal. We just hire another person that, maybe the next one will. So it's not that critical that you don't assess them with perfect accuracy, And I'm saying this because it's like a bad thing, but it's also a good thing. Because if you know how they assess you, you know how to sort of game that process a little bit, at least to make you look as favorable as possible. Not that it's dishonest or anything, but it's a sales process. You want to try and emphasize your strengths and de-emphasize your weaknesses. It's just that simple. Susan is getting into sort of a general discussion about stuff here. Kind of want to be more than a number. We're not really people in heads when all they know about us is text. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's a very impersonal thing. And yeah, like I've talked about that many times on my channel. You're absolutely right. Amaze says, would you recommend asking for the email address of the hiring manager for post-interview follow-up if this information is not available? I don't know. If it's not available, it's 99% of the time because they don't want it to be available, right? Like, for every job that they're filling, okay, the hiring manager will meet with maybe 6 candidates. Like, you'll do interviews with approximately 6 candidates for most jobs. That varies wildly, but the average is about 6. So they've met 6 candidates. 5 of them will be going home with a no, because there's one job and there's 6 candidates that you interview. So does the hiring manager want to have like long discussions with 5 candidates about why they didn't get the job? No, that's not fun. It serves no purpose for them, and they can't be honest anyway. So a lot of times they will actually not sort of give that information out because they don't want to encourage those types of conversations. The way to get that if you really need to, is if you go down to an interview, what I recommend and what I've done for years is that you can get business cards printed up. Like for literally $20, you can get like a massive stack of really professional looking business cards. If you have a LinkedIn profile, the header of your LinkedIn profile, it says your name, your tagline. It might have like a headshot, like a professional headshot where you're just head and shoulders, and then it has your contact information, your email address, phone number, maybe social media stuff. Just put that on the business card, Bill Todd, engineer or student or YouTuber or former CEO, whatever you want your tagline to be to that person. If you're applying for engineering jobs and you have a degree in engineering, you would probably say like engineering or, something like that. And then your contact information, your headshot, and then I wear shirts, business shirts where you have a breast pocket, right? You probably can't see, but I've got a breast pocket right here. You go to any kind of meeting or interview or encounter with people, first thing I do is you take out a card and you give them your card. And that's a cue for them to take out their cards and give you a card. And that way you have their name, you have their email address, all that kind of stuff, right? So if you're doing that in job interviews, then you walk out. First of all, you put the cards on the table so you remember what people's names are and who they are. Is that the hiring manager or is that the recruiter? Is this the owner of the company? Like who is this person I'm talking to? And then you keep the business cards, right? So if you want to follow up, you have their email address or whatever you're looking for. If you want to score some brownie points, give them a call in the evening so it goes to their voicemail and you leave a message. You say, hey, it was very, very nice to meet you. Thank you for bringing me in. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you and the other person. Listen, I'm very excited to see where this goes. I'm hoping that it works out favorably and we'll have a chance to speak again. But if you should, in the meantime, if you should need anything else from me, let me know if there's anything, any information that I can provide you with. Other than that, have yourself a great day. Thank you very much. Take care. Something like that. And you get some brownie points doing that. Amaze says, actually, the purpose of the email address is to send a thank you note. That's all. Yeah, like if it's a thank you note, that's fine. But when you said post-interview follow-up, I thought it might be like, why didn't I get the job? What can I work on? That kind of stuff. I thought you meant that kind of stuff. A lot of people try and ask that and they can't respond to that. If they ever do, it's never the truth. It's just some, just some nice sounding thing that, So that's what I thought you meant. Susan Wu says, time is a cost, so is training. Everything you can do to demonstrate you'll waste as little of their time is a good thing. Thoughts on that end? Well, yeah, I mean, that's training is a whole thing. Like training is complicated. Yeah, I don't know if I really want to jump into that. That's a big topic. But on the other hand, like if you're going to hire employees and it costs you an arm and a leg, which it always does, but because you don't want to spend a few more nickels to actually train them, they end up being wildly ineffective. Does that make sense to you? Sometimes a little bit of training makes a lot of sense. Or what the hell are you doing? You know what I mean? We've hired this highly professional person, highly educated, highly experienced, but we don't want to spend $100 to actually teach them how to use our own internal data systems. We're going to let them figure that out on their own over the next 6 months so that they will always be inefficient, as you get over that learning curve in a very prolonged way. Does that make sense to you? So it depends what you mean by training, There's training and then there's training. And a lot of organizations are great at shooting themselves in the foot with little things like this, where the rubber hits the road. Like for example, any training or onboarding that's done by the HR department, that counts as a training expense, whereas any training or onboarding that's done by your boss is not officially regarded as training. It's just not tracked or even counted, right? But yet you're consuming the time of someone who's paid like an astronomical amount of money per hour, and they're, instead of doing their job, they're spent getting you up to speed, as the new employee, right? So a lot of those costs are not captured, and they're not even considered, and that's just one of the million inefficiencies that we have with the workforce. Yeah. Okay, let's finally address the main topic of this live stream, which is the best answer to the job interview question, why do you want to work here? So you go down to a job interview. I'm just going to move my mic here. You go down to a job interview, and they're going to ask you some cliched standard job interview questions, right? They're going to say, tell me about yourself. They're going to say, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? How do you handle stress? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Why did you leave your last job? What are your salary expectations? What is your current salary? Kind of standard job interview questions, right? Then they'll ask you behavioral questions, right? And there's no way you can prepare for each and every possible behavioral interview question, because there's like literally a million of them. Tell me about a time that, you had to solve a problem on the job using creative thinking while you had to work with someone with which you had a conflict. Tell me about a time when you did that. Like some exotic behavioral question. They'll ask you these questions, and they'll give themselves a pat on the back for how creative they are and how original they are, so that you couldn't have possibly prepared for that exact question, right? But among the sort of, standard cliched job interview questions is this one, right? Where they say, why do you want to work here? And people misunderstand this question. They think like, you're asking like, why do I need a job? And that's not what they're asking. So they say, why do you want to work here? And you say, well, hello, I need to eat, so I don't starve. It's like, no, that's wrong answer. That's not what they're asking. They're saying, why do you want to work here specifically, as opposed to any other place you could work? Why are you coming to try and get a job here? What is it about this place that made you apply? That's what the question means, right? So this question is really a test to see if you have any enthusiasm for this particular job. And a lot of people kind of fail this test because they're just applying for every job that they see. They really give no great thought to, do I want to work there or not? It's like, I just need money, so I'll apply anywhere, right? The problem is they get a call back. You're like, oh, okay, you want to talk to me? Great. So you go down to the interview, and one of the things they say is, well, what was it about this job that, made you apply for this job? And most people kind of stare at them like they got 7 heads and go, I don't know, you guys are a company that pays people. I don't know. It's like fail, right? They want to see that you're enthusiastic about working here. So the first step to kind of convey that is to show that you know something about this company, right? It's kind of a test to see if you've done a little bit of research. So if you've taken 2 minutes to look up that company online, right? That's the most obvious thing you can do. What does that company do, right? What business are they in? Okay, you might know that they are in the business of manufacturing helicopters, right? Okay, great. Is that all they do? Do they do that and that's it? Or do they do that and other things? How do they manufacture helicopters? Are their helicopters exactly the same as every other company's helicopters, or are they different in some way? Like what's their edge? What's their their special thing that they do that's different, right? Do you know that? Now if you know it, you say like, yeah, well, first of all, I love helicopters. Ever since I was a kid, I played with little toy helicopters, and I've always been fascinated by them. I'm a fully qualified technician, aerospace technician. I can fix helicopters, and they've always had a very special place in my heart. And I know that the helicopter models that you guys make, they use this particular configuration. They're still using piston engines as opposed to turboprops or something, I don't know. And, I also am passionate about piston engines. I'm a car enthusiast, and I like piston engines. I cut my teeth, mechanically on like repairing and modifying piston engines. So this is what I'm excited to do. It's this kind of work, that I really enjoy. So you guys are the only manufacturer of helicopters that do that. So that's what brought me to you guys. I'm excited to see where this goes because I got some real talents in a couple of areas that I can't bring to a lot of other roles in this industry, but I can bring it here. Something like that. Right? So it shows that you know about this company, you're enthusiastic about the company, and it makes sense why you would work here. That gives you an edge over probably almost everyone else that applied, or at least everyone else that they interviewed with. Right? That's what they're looking for. They're looking for enthusiasm. They're looking for motivation. The question is not about you. The way you can answer this also is like a little bit of flattery, not for them personally, but for the company. You say like, you guys have been building these helicopters for many years. And, because you've gone this route with your design, it gives you this edge. Like how many helicopters can you repair using off-the-shelf automotive parts? Not many, because all the other helicopters have turbojets or turbofans, or whatever they've got in them. It's like a highly precision instrument with turbine blades and stuff. That requires very specialized equipment with very tight tolerances. Your design with piston engines, it's super rugged. They can take punishment in a way that other helicopters can't. This is what gives you guys the edge. That's why I like this technology. That's why I think it's the future, and that's why I'm excited to work on it and help you guys bring the helicopter business into the future, whatever. Right? Something like that. Like it's a bit of flattery for the organization. After you say something like that, they'll be like, wow, this person gets it. And it can overcome perhaps some deficiencies in you not having as much experience as other candidates or having quite the education that other candidates have. You got the enthusiasm, and you come across as a much better fit. They should pick you because you belong here more than other people do. Okay? That's how you answer this question. Sometimes this question can be asked as like another form of, why should we hire you? Why do you want to work here? Why should we hire you? They can mean it like that, where you answer it by giving your strengths. Why should you hire me? Because I'm this. Why do you want to work here? Because I've got this. You're looking for that? I got that. I'm a fit. That's why you should hire me. Why do you want this job is another kind of synonym of that. I want it because you seem to be looking for exactly what I have. I seem to be a perfect fit. You're looking for this. I got this. That's why I want to work here. Seems like you could really use my skills, and all my assets can come to bear in this role. Something like that. Okay. So sometimes they ask it in that sense, but the vast majority of the time, this question is the check for enthusiasm to see if you've done some research on them, you know a little bit about them, and you can make an argument of why you belong here, specifically. That's what I have to say about that. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's go back to you guys in the chat. Where did I leave off here? Susan is doing a lot of talking. Susan says, kind of coming at this from a technician standpoint and not a management standpoint. They're very different mindsets. Yes, they are. But they all serve the same goal, which is to make money. You need both. Johnny says, hi, how would you describe a very long gap on a resume? To whom? To a recruiter? You can describe it to a recruiter, but at the end of the day, they will still label you a higher risk candidate because they know that they don't know the true reason why there's that work gap. And the problem is that at the end of the day, even if you give like a very convincing sort of explanation, they realize it still could be a lie. If you haven't been working for a while, there's a chance that there's a reason why you haven't been working for a while. Maybe there's something wrong with you, or you've got issues, right? So they will label you a high risk candidate. It's the same as if you're changing careers. When you're talking to a recruiter, you're always at a disadvantage. Usually, you can't change careers by going through a recruiter. There's always exceptions, but the general rule is you can't. You fix both of these problems the same way. You don't talk to recruiters, you talk to a hiring manager. You talk shop with a hiring manager, and they get to know you. They see that you know your stuff. They see that you guys get along great. They see that you're articulate, that you're professional, you're charismatic, you're mature. You understand etiquette and protocol. Your grooming and attire is professional. The way you communicate is professional. And if all that stuff's in place and they like you, then occasionally they will give you a chance. They will say, look, you seem perfectly fine, and I'm going to give you a chance, right? Despite the fact that either you've never done this before in the case of changing careers, or despite the fact that you've been out of work for a while and I don't really know if you've been honest with me, and the reason you've given is the real reason. I will never know that. But I like you. You seem to know your stuff. It seems like you could do the job. So you know what? I have something here. I'll take a chance on you. That's how you overcome these things. Sometimes you can go through a recruiter and they'll just, it'll work out. But a lot of times, the way they're trained to think is that a work gap makes you a high risk candidate for that reason. And all things being equal, they are looking for the lowest risk candidate. Not necessarily the best candidate, the lowest risk candidate. And that's where having a work gap can be an issue. Okay? So what's the solution? The solution I'd recommend is check out other ways of getting a job than going through a recruiter. Check out the wonderful world of networking. More people get hired through networking than through going through recruiters and answering job ads. You don't need to know a single person to do this. You reach out to the organizations. And it's a really great way of doing it because, instead of talking about how awesome you are, you're in the process of demonstrating how awesome you are, right? You don't have to tell them you're professional because they can see you're professional. You don't have to try and argue that you're enthusiastic about it because you have demonstrated by virtue of the fact that you reached out to them that you are enthusiastic about it. That's why it's so powerful. That's why it can be the tiebreaker that overcomes a lot of these types of disadvantages. If you're a generalist, I don't know if you've noticed, but the official enterprise flavor of recruitment and selection is biased against you. What's the number one metric that recruiters always reduce everything to? It's years of experience, right? That's their universal metric. And the idea is that if one candidate has 7 years of experience and another candidate has 12 years of experience, they'll conclude that the one with 12 years of experience is the better employee, right? Now, we all know that that's pretty flimsy, right? There are a lot of people that have been doing a job for a long time and they've been doing it wrong the entire time. And they suck. And they've got a terrible attitude. You know? Right? So like, but the problem is that recruiters don't understand the jobs they're recruiting for. So they have to come up with a system where like someone who doesn't know anything about like accounting can decide which candidate would be a better accountant. You know what I'm saying? So that's why they do these things where they like look at years of experience, you know, and stuff like that. They look at keywords. They don't know what any of these things really are. They just, you know, oh, you have this? Okay. You have 12 years of it? Okay. That's better than 7 years because 12 is more than 7. Therefore, you're the better candidate, you know? So if you're a generalist, you've moved around, you know, you got 2 years of accounting, but you've also got 10 years of management experience. You got 5 years of being a technician. You got 3 years of being in a traveling circus, you know, and you've got 2 years of being an entrepreneur and doing your own business. Who would be the better accountant? Well, accountant is a bad example, but sometimes it's that person. Because even though they have less years of experience as an accountant, they have seen much more solutions to problems in a variety of situations, whereas someone that's been stuck in one job the entire time, they won't have that, right? They'll be much more flexible, much more resourceful, much more savvy, much more understanding of different ways of solving problems, you know? Right? Well, I went on another tangent, and I went all the way out here. And it's fun out here. I have no idea how to get back or where I even came from, but let's see. Anyway, we're talking about, originally, Johnny was asking about long gaps on a resume. Susanu says, might read the mission statement of their PR if they have it before they ask such a question. Okay. Part of that is making sure I'm not working somewhere I'm not going to stay. I need to fit for the culture. Includes getting along with the people there, obviously. Yeah, you know, and something we haven't mentioned, but it's a staple of this stuff, is that if you're new to job search, if you're just doing interviews and you're not that experienced at it, just so you know, you might not be aware of this, job interviews are about the soft skills. They're not about your technical qualifications. That can be counterintuitive because what do they ask you about? They ask you about your technical qualifications, right? It's the application stage that's about the technical qualifications. That's where they look at you on paper and they see, can you do this job? And they look at you on paper and they say, are you technically qualified to do the job or are you not? And if you're not, you're filtered out. Beyond the application stage, everyone that they bring in for an interview, they've decided that each one of those people on paper are technically qualified to do the job. So you're not going to get one up on the competition by showing you're more qualified, because in the minds of the decision makers, whether it's a recruiter or hiring manager, any of those candidates would be fine. They could all technically do the job. That's not what this is about now. Now it's about what you're like as a person. What's your attitude? How are your communication skills? Can you collaborate with people? Do you act professionally? Do you represent the organization in a favorable light? Do you click personally with the boss, with the hiring manager? Like, do you have the same communication style, collaboration style, work style? All that kind of stuff, right? Do you have any charisma? Or are you extremely off-putting? Or do you have personal issues? You might be brilliant, but maybe you have personal issues. You have like a lightning quick temper or something like that just, it's a deal breaker, So job interviews are really to assess your soft skills, right? Maybe you're very, very argumentative, or maybe you're like a people pleaser to such a degree that you can't give bad news when you can't say no when the answer's no. That would be a problem. You know what I mean? So that's what job interviews are really about. It's not about technical qualifications. It's about soft skills. So Susanoo is kind of touching on that, I think. We're talking about business models. We're talking about norms. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying ties into that, I think. Amaze says, "Hi, Bill. What length of time for employment gap would you consider a concern? Thank you." That will vary. What I consider doesn't matter. It matters what the employers that you're looking at consider. And just like everybody assesses an employee's value in a different way, different people will draw that line in different places. So it's a very fuzzy line. 3 months, I don't think is a problem. Wait a minute. What are we talking about here? Was that job hopping you're talking about? This keeps moving on me. What length of employment gap would you, the employment gap, like 3 months, absolutely not a problem. 2 years, yes, that would be like an employment gap where you would want an explanation and it might be a concern. If you couldn't get a job for 2 years, oh yes, I know we've heard the official explanation of it, but you don't really know if that's true. It could raise questions as to, like, is there a reason why this person couldn't get hired for 2 years? Now COVID kind of changed that a little bit, because before COVID, I would have said like a year. If you're out of work for more than a year, then it can start to be an issue, or it can be perceived as an issue. But after COVID, like, a lot of people are out of work for a long time. It wasn't like an exotic thing anymore. It was like a lot of people, God, excuse me. You know what I mean? So, so that's kind of reset things a bit. So I'm honestly not sure. You don't need to know this. You're not going to know how people assess you. You just go ahead and try. Now, if you think it might be a concern, as I said, try networking. Like, that's really how you should get a job. And from now to the end of your career, that's what you should be doing. And leave the world of posted jobs behind you, right? If you can do that, do that. Okay? Come on in. The water's fine. That's where the good jobs are. The process is easier. You meet less officious, incompetent people that, disrespect you. It almost feels like a referral, because, most meetings with people, they invite you in. It's not like you're going down to an official interview with a whole bunch of other people and you're treated like cattle. It's like, no, they request that you come in. That's usually how that works, right? So, if I could give any advice to job seekers, I would say, like, learn that world, step into that world. Even if it seems a little intimidating and it's like there's this whole universe of stuff you don't know, start down that path, start learning this stuff, because it'll open so many doors for you. There'll be so many opportunities, right? People who are connected, they're never out of work. People who are connected, there's always like opportunities, they could like take that, or they could take this, or this thing just came up and you could do that if you wanted to. Do you want to leave this and go jump onto that? You can, right? You know what I mean? And if you're an introvert, you're a technical type, like an engineer or technician or whatever, accountant, whatever, you can work in that world too. This is the beauty of like a lot of social networking and stuff. You don't have to be always like face to face with people for a lot of it. You still can't entirely get away from that. If you're like really discussing signing on with a company, you do have to talk to someone. Just like a job interview, you have to talk to someone face to face. But everything that leads up to the setting up of that it all can be done virtually, if that's the way you want to go. If you're an extrovert, you don't have to do any of this. You could just do everything face to face. There's all kinds of other things you can do there too. But, this is a real thing. And when you do it, a lot of these questions and a lot of these issues just evaporate. They become irrelevant. Like work gaps, nobody cares. Changing careers, nobody cares. it's not a deal breaker. It's not a concern. Why you are in YouTube? Are you looking for job? Interesting conversation we got going. This is extremely complicated for new graduates. No, listen, no, it isn't. Let me paint you a picture. Okay, like listen. I'm just trying to share some of the things I've learned over my career that, like, this is how stuff works. And I'm a technical introvert. I've got an engineering degree, and I had social anxiety till I was well into my late 20s for sure. So people that are like in that situation, I feel a certain kinship for, because I feel like I used to be you, and I still am you from a personality perspective, but I've learned a few tips and tricks along the way that really overcome a lot of that stuff. Not all of it, but a lot of it. If you're a new grad, see if you can understand this. Okay? Let's pretend there's an internship. Okay? Your school offers some kind of internship. So let's say it's a 4-year degree. Okay? Some students, if you get accepted into the internship, after you do the 3rd year, you can tack on 1 year of like working for a company for 1 year, and then you come back to school, and then you complete your 4th year. That's the internship, okay? So the school decides which students in their program they're going to send for an internship, right? And they've got to deal with like a local company. And it's a mutually beneficial arrangement where the school sends some bright, young, enthusiastic students to work at that company, right? So the students get an enriched educational experience. They come out of school with career-related work experience. So that's great for them. The company benefits because the company either doesn't pay the students anything, or it pays them like a pittance. So they get cheap labor. So they're all in favor of this kind of exchange program, this internship. They're every bit as in favor of it as the school is, right? It's a kind of a good arrangement for them. Now, the question is, how do you get selected for the internship if that's something you want to do? Okay? Usually, a school will have some kind of official process where, maybe there's a website, and they say, go to the website and make your application online, and then that gets processed through our administrators or our HR department, whatever. And there's some involvement with a few professors or whatever, and they decide it. And in the end, we decide, who are we going to send, right? We will pick, the finalists, and those are the people we're going to send that get accepted into the internship, right? Okay, so you can follow the official process. You do what they say to do. You stay at home, you log into their website, you submit your resume, you write an essay of why you want to do it, you put in a cover letter and, whatever forms they want, you fill in all the fields, right? And then you send your application, and you hope that they pick you, right? Now, what's going on behind the scenes is that maybe they filter those, some idiot recruiter kind of does some very basic filtering. They filter out the people that didn't complete the application. They filter out the people that they haven't completed their 3rd year, and maybe their marks weren't that great. So, technical reasons like that. But then all the remaining applications, they go to one professor. And that professor, it's basically up to them, who they think is a good idea to send, right? Right, so that's the process. So they look at all the students on paper, they look at their applications, and then this professor makes a decision and makes their recommendation. Now imagine if you did something a little different, okay? Imagine if instead of just going online and filling in the application online, instead, before you do that, you asked around, you asked some student advisors or administrators, whatever, who deals with the internships? Whose purview is it to vet the candidates and makes a decision? I'm just curious, who's deciding these things? And they say, oh, it's this professor, right? You say, okay, thank you. And you go to that professor's office, you knock on the door, right? And you say, yeah, hello, listen, I'm in one of your classes, or I'm not in one of your classes, I'm in the program, but I understand that, you are the decision maker on who gets to go for the internship. Is that correct? And they'll say, yes, I guess. And you say, okay, listen, I haven't applied for it, but I'm curious. I'm thinking it might be something that I want to do, but I have a couple of questions. Would you possibly have a little bit of time now just to answer a couple of quick questions about the internship program? Now, if you've caught the professor at a good time, maybe like immediately after lunch on a Friday is usually a good time. They're in a good mood. The weekend's coming, they might say, sure, yeah, I got like a few minutes now. Yeah, we could do it. So you go and you say like, yeah, listen, like it seems really interesting, really exciting. Like, what exactly do you do? What is it? What benefits does it have? What do you need? You show interest, right? And you're being professional and you're showing some enthusiasm about it. And then after the professor has answered the questions, you say like, wow, that's really great. I actually, now that I understand a bit more about it, it actually looks like a really tremendous opportunity. I can see why this would be a very valuable thing. You get this. It's like, okay, I'm in this program. Do you think it would make sense for me to apply for this? They'll probably say, sure, yeah, it seems like, something you could do. And you're like, okay, great. Listen, thank you for your time. Like, I really appreciate it. Right? So you go away. You send in your application. You do all the online stuff, right? Okay. You wait like, I don't know, a week or two, something like that. Go see the professor again. Say, hi, yeah, remember me? Yeah, we spoke like a month ago. It was actually interesting. We were talking about the internship. I'm not sure if you recall. Yeah, listen, I put in for it. And I was just wondering, like, first of all, is there an update, or when would people maybe hear of the decision? Something like that, right? You're showing interest, being professional, right? Asking intelligent questions, saying intelligent things that shows that, you really get it. You understand what this is. You understand the benefits of it. You have kind of what they're looking for. You would represent the organization well. You would complete the internship if given the chance. You wouldn't just drop out of it, Now, when that professor has to make a decision on who they're going to send, and this is all assuming you have like the basic requirements for it, right? Who are they going to pick? Are they going to pick someone that they've never met, that hasn't shown any, independent signs of enthusiasm or professionalism or any of those soft skills? Are they going to pick them, or are they going to go with the only one of these candidates they've actually met who has shown enthusiasm, literal, like real passion, who seems to really fit with what they're looking for, who gets it, who has presented themselves professionally, is easy to work with, who hasn't like given them any grief or grilled them about, the process? Who would you pick if you're wanting to pick people that will work out? You'd probably pick the person you've met that's independently shown these things, right? It's not the be all end all, but it helps a lot, right? So that's kind of like, hopefully that example illustrates the value of networking. Like, that's what we're doing. People talking to each other is networking, right? You reached out to a person, and you got some information out of them. You communicated some things to them, right? They were happy to talk to you. You were there for a legitimate reason. You didn't force yourself on them in any way, right? It wasn't awkward or silly, or you're overstepping or violating procedure. You have the right to talk to anyone you want. The professor's door is wide open. You asked, do you have a few moments? They said, sure, right? That's networking, right? So, that's probably like a really easy way of like stepping into that world, right? all you have to have is a little bit of charisma. You have to be able to ask people questions, relevant questions that they want to answer. You have to show up at the right time when they have time. Don't show up at them when they got 2 minutes before a class and you could have checked that before you decided to show up there. You know what I mean? That's probably a simple example. So hopefully you get the idea. It's not super complicated, but it's like a whole other world that they usually don't teach about in school. This is what bugs me, you know? Instead, you got a lot of people just sort of like taking a number and waiting in line, and they're expecting someone to come and like, attend to them. And sometimes that works, and sometimes it makes sense. But a lot of other things in life, that's not the whole story. People like people that are excited and interested and in tune, and that's what this process is. Let's see here. Regis says, have to take off. Thank you for discussion. Okay, great. Thank you for being here. Deepak says, your guidelines are complicated for new get. Hope it's not your earning, whatever. I don't understand what you're saying. Chris Tarley, I have a terrible tendency of saying what I think the interviewer wants to hear. I struggle to reconcile. Well, as opposed to what? As opposed to saying you're kicking yourself because you need to tell them what they don't want to hear? No, that's what you kind of want to do, right? Is you want to tell them what they want to hear. The trick is to have it be, truthful, right? Like, you don't want to lie. I struggle to reconcile how to mix being amicable along with being upfront and honest. Have you seen this while coaching? I don't coach, so I don't do coaching. I mean, I talk about this stuff for what it's worth, but yeah, those are not like mutually exclusive, right? You see, look, most people, I think, and it's just a guess here, but most people, I think, could do the job that they're applying for. You know what I mean? It's not really a question of like, could you do this job or not? You could do it. The challenge is, I know a lot of people, their challenge is they don't understand what this process is. They don't understand what the purpose is, what the recruiter is looking for. It's a sales process. Man, you're absolutely right. Thank you for letting me know in the chat that my mic went out, because I obviously have to fix this connection here. There's obviously something happened with my microphone. Okay, hopefully that worked. Okay, what I was trying to say was I was responding to Chris's comment, talking about being honest, saying I feel conflicted between representing myself well, making a good impression, but also being honest and upfront. Right? Now, what I'm saying is that those are not mutually exclusive. You can do both. But the problem is that honest, that can mean a variety of different things to different people. For example, if you're going to be honest, does that mean you come down to the interview and you say, look, okay, listen, before you start, okay, you need to know, okay, that I don't do this. I don't do sales, okay? And you also need to know that I'm not a morning person, okay? I'm in a really rotten mood in the mornings, and I don't do this, don't try and give me anything in the morning because I'm very irritable and I've got a really rotten temper, okay? I think it's only, it behooves me to tell you this. I need to tell you this for the sake of being upfront and honest with you, so you know exactly who you're dealing with, because we're going to be working together for a while, and it's in the interests of full disclosure, you need to know this up front. Right? Now, is that what you mean by honest? Because you are being honest. And usually that results in, okay, great. Well, thank you. I appreciate you being honest. I appreciate you being candid about this. It's great that I now know, some details about you that, that were in my interest to know. And your reward for doing that is they don't pick you, right? Everybody has weaknesses. Everybody has things that are less favorable about them, right? Traits, whatever. Personality quirks, experiences, abilities, You know what I'm saying? But is it the right thing to do to do that in a job interview? Of course it isn't. I mean, maybe it might be right to you if you feel that you need to do this, but in terms of maximizing your chances of them picking you, that's not the right thing to do, right? I'm not saying you need to lie. That's not what I'm saying at all. You don't lie, but you don't just disclose things that are making you seem unfavorable, right? That's what sales is. You talk about how all the strengths, what this thing can do, and how great it's going to be, if you have this, right? You don't lead with, this is not the cheapest option, and when it comes down to it, it's not the best quality option that you could go with, and some people don't like it. Do you lead with that? Those are all true, but do you just disclose them in the, with the motivation of being honest? So obviously I'm beating this to death. You can see what I'm saying, right? It's possible to go in there and you don't misrepresent yourself at all. You don't say anything that's in any way untrue, right? We always tell the truth, but we don't always disclose everything. And we disclose certain things at certain times. Like when they ask about this, or, right up front or whatever, you lead with something as opposed to saving it to the 30th thing you say, right? Okay. What you do is you go in there and you show them all your soft skills. You show them you're professional. You show them you're charismatic. You show them that you're easy to deal with. You know what I mean? And when they come to asking you questions and the subject matter of those questions, you don't say anything negative. You don't reveal any weaknesses. You try your absolute utmost to not mention a weakness of yours. Right? Why? It's very simple, because the next candidate that you're in competition with, they didn't mention any weaknesses about themselves. So if you go in there and say, yeah, well, it's true, I do have a very bad temper, and it's true that I've never been in this situation before, so I wouldn't know how to handle it, right? You're being honest, but it's counting against you. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, Susan Wu has it right. Use tact. They don't need to know your every thought or quirk. Exactly. You selectively disclose things on your own terms. That's what it's about. Guess another way to put it. Would you tell someone you're trying to be friends with that when you just met them? I don't know. Are you trying to be friends? If you're maybe trying to be friends, I suppose you could tell them. It would be really hard to say that in the first encounter and have it seem genuine. So I wouldn't say that, But for example, everything I've mentioned in this live stream, all these different types of networking encounters, it's never to be friends. It's to either answer a specific question or find out something specific. You know what I mean? Like you're wanting something else. You're not like talking to them for the purposes of being friends. I mean, hey, if that ends up happening, great, but that's not why you're there, right? You would say like, I'm here because I have a question about this, or I'm here because I'm interested in hearing your expert opinion on this, or I'm here because I just wanted to let you know that if ever you're looking for someone who can do this, give me a call, something like that. You have a specific purpose. You're not just there to be friends. So I wouldn't, that's not how I would recommend people do it. Jack says, I don't know if you put too much politics. What are your thoughts on federal workers, multiple jobs? I don't know, and I don't care. I'm not in that. Like, are you in the United States? I'm not in that country, so I wouldn't know about that issue. Just curious about increasing net worth, not the yeah, no problem. I mean, this live stream, we talk about how to get hired. That's what it's about. So that's a little bit outside of that. Normally, I do a live stream where we talk about entrepreneurship, that kind of thing. My core competency is growing companies. So I used to do a live stream on that, on like leadership and business. Wasn't as popular as like, how to get a job. So I guess there's more demand for this. So, but I'd like to get into that kind of thing, but there's just a lot smaller of an audience for it. Chris says, also, I tend to not always just answer the interview question. I go off on tangents. Okay, now that is a problem with preparation. Okay, here's what you want to do. Okay, first of all, this is how I recommend people prepare for job interviews. Okay, it's kind of like a two-phase process. Number one, the first thing you do is you learn the basic answers to all the standard job interview questions. Okay, so like you find out what those are, okay, and then you memorize them. And that's work you do by yourself. Okay, so like you don't need a partner or anything like that. You just do this work. You figure out like when they ask this question, what do I say? And there's about 10 of these that are like the real staples of like, job interviews. I mentioned them earlier. And then it goes outward from there. You get a sort of second tier of questions, like how do you handle stress? If, what type of animal best represents you? All these like, you can go further outwards from there. Learn some of those. It depends how long you've been at this. You don't have to learn all the exotic ones, but, do as many as you can and practice your answer, right? Then you learn behavioral questions, right? Behavioral questions are a different thing. That's where they ask you for a story from your past. They say, tell me about a time when you had to do this. And you say, okay, no problem. Well, just last year I was working in this role and I was asked to do this. Well, here's what I did. Here's how it turned out. And this was the end result. Like those are behavioral questions. So everybody's going to have their own answer because it's a story from your past. There's no way you can, memorize answers to every possible behavioral question because there's literally like a million different questions they could ask, right? So the way you do it is you prepare stories ahead of time. You rehearse like telling some of your great, like for example, I recommend rehearsing 10 stories. And these are stories that you've done, so you already know. But what you're rehearsing is like saying them in a very compact way. Usually the most popular way of doing it is the star format, right? There's other ways too, but it's basically the same thing. So, 5 of those 10 stories will be like your 5 most shining moments in your career. Your boss, gave you an assignment, says, I need you to do this. And you succeeded way beyond their expectations. You were commended for it. Maybe you were promoted for it. Like that would be one of the stories you pull out, right? But you vet them to make sure that, they're good. You handled it the right way. You didn't do some weird thing that if you tell people that's what you did, they won't see it as a favorable. So you vet those stories. You come up with 10 of them. Maybe how you handled a conflict, how you use creativity, conflict with a boss, conflict with a coworker, maybe a technical challenge. So you've got these in the back of your mind. You've rehearsed these, you've practiced saying them in a compact way. And that's like the sort of phase 1 of 2. Phase 2 is, if you really want to do this properly, get a friend or family member or someone else. Some people get like career coaches or whatever, but a friend or family member will do for most people, and do pretend interviews with them. Get them to pretend to be the interviewer, and they're going to ask you questions. And you can give them a list of questions, or you can tell them like, go create your own questions, and then do a whole bunch of them. Do like 2 or 3 of them a day for at least a couple weeks. And if it feels weird, that's good, because that's simulating what it's probably going to feel like in a job interview. You're a little bit nervous, a little bit out of your comfort zone, So being able to think and deliver a good performance under those conditions is something you want to rehearse, right? Okay, so that's how I recommend people prepare for this. Now, if you do that, you will be a pro at this. You will be an absolute pro. You will knock it out of the park, because every job interview you go to, you'll see like it's 90% the same. They ask the same questions, right? Goes the same way. An added benefit is that sometimes you can get your partner, whether they're a friend or family member, if you trust them. You don't always trust friends and family, but if you do trust them, they can maybe give you an objective feedback. Like they could say like, listen, you did well as far as I can tell, but you really look angry, when we're doing this. I don't know if you I don't know if you realize that, but you look like upset. Maybe just try and smile a little bit more. Just look a bit more approachable and like you're having a good time. Because I can tell you, if you glare at people in a job interview the way you were kind of glaring at me a moment ago, it might not be the best thing. So you can also get that kind of benefit too. Sometimes. Right? If you're working with a career coach, that's definitely something that, you will pay them for, right? You get their professional, objective opinion that they can share with you, and they make recommendations and they say like, try doing it like this, But for most people, just friends or family member is sufficient, and then just do it a bunch of times. And as you do it over and over and over again, you will get better and better and better. You'll feel more and more comfortable, and then you'll feel confident because you'll see that you're getting it right. They ask you the same questions. They ask you, tell me about yourself every single time you do it. After the 10th time, you're probably going to get the answer right. And you're probably going to say it effortlessly and without hesitation and confidently, you know what I mean? So this is how you rehearse this stuff. Practice makes perfect. Nobody, and I mean nobody, is good at job interviews right out of the gate. They're not. No one is. I don't care who you are. But with some practice, it's possible for anyone to be pretty damn decent at this, The amount of rehearsal it'll take varies, but, this is how you get good at something. Practice makes perfect. So that's what I'd recommend. So within 2 weeks, you could be like an absolute pro at this. You could outperform probably all the other candidates in job interviews if you rehearse and like take it seriously. You don't rehearse once or twice. You rehearse like 50 times over a period of a couple of weeks, Where did I leave off? This has been moving here. Let's see. I think I was here. Susan O says it's more a comment on self-fueling catastrophes. Okay. Yeah, I don't understand the context of that, unfortunately. William, how long after the interview should you touch base to see where you stand? You mean like follow up, like see if there's any updates, like have I been rejected? Am I making it to the next round? Listen, advice on that varies because situations vary. Personally, for me, I feel that for most jobs, like they'll call you if they want to move on with you, they will let you know. But just getting on the horn every day and saying like, any news yet? Any news yet? It's like, first of all, to try and do that to like, every job you apply for and like keep following up, there's better uses of your time, in my opinion. If it's a job that you're really pushing for, like you're really hoping and you want to give yourself every possible advantage, then I would follow up with it like a couple of times. If you do an interview, I would send a thank you note the next day within 24 hours. And then within, say, 3 or 4 business days, I would follow up. Not that you're really expecting them to have reached a decision necessarily, but it's more of a signal to say like, look, I'm interested and I care about this particular opportunity, and some of the time that can give you like points for showing enthusiasm. A lot of times it doesn't, but sometimes it can. So, and I'd follow up once, maybe twice, if it was like a really, dream job that you're hoping to get. That's what I would do. But for like everything else, I wouldn't bother doing too much of this. They're dealing with a lot of other candidates. Excuse me. They're dealing with a lot of other people. And, sometimes you don't get favorable responses. Either you're just kind of like filling up their inbox with like communication that doesn't necessarily accomplish any of their goals. You know what I'm saying? It just sort of gets in the way. Susan who says, yep, practice. Yep. Gets overused. However, we default to our training kind of goal times. Keeps momentum though. I don't think this will be on. No, listen, what you're talking about is heuristics. It's like basically where it's almost like muscle memory. So if you've been asked the question, like, tell me about yourself in 30 mock interviews that you've done over a few weeks, it's like, it's almost muscle memory what to say. So you're not going to go to a real job interview and then just get so nervous that you'll just stare at them blankly when they ask you that because you can't remember anything. You'll know what to say because it's muscle memory. You've been asked that question so many times and you know the answer. You've said the answer so many times. There's no danger of you forgetting it, right? And that's the defense against being nervous. Public speaking is a lot like that too. When in the beginning you get like really nervous when you get up in front of a crowd of people, preparation is the weapon against that. That's how you succeed despite being nervous because you've done this many times before. You know how it goes. You know it backwards and forwards. It's well worth the time you put in to go to interviews and feel like you did a fantastic job. There's nothing you couldn't answer. You knew exactly what to say for everything. And on top of that, you were even, you had like brain power left over to think about like your body language and your, charisma and, this kind of thing. I have a live stream that's coming up in like a couple of minutes. So this actually is taken up. Today is a bit of a different day for me. My schedule is different from my normal Mondays. So I'm going to be back in a couple of minutes with a different live stream on the same channel because we're going to do a live stream called Honest HR Nitrous. So come back. I will answer the last couple of questions here first thing on that second live stream. Thank you for joining me. You guys are awesome. I wish you the best of luck. Take care.